My name is Ruth Keller, 67, a retired elementary school teacher who still wakes before sunrise because old habits don't know when to quit. The morning my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, I was buttering toast and listening to the cardinals argue in the oak outside. The screen flashed, "Sloane, my daughter-in-law." I wiped my hands, swallowed a little dread, and answered, "Good," she said, not bothering with hello. "You're not doing anything. Watch the kids. I'm going to Palm Crest for a few weeks." I could hear pool water somewhere behind her and a man's laugh that didn't belong to my son. Something tipped inside me. Not brittle, not dramatic, just a small, steady click, like a lock that finally found its groove. My toast cooled, my kettle hummed. I kept my voice level. "Drop them off," I said. "I'll make lunch." She hung up without thanks. Butter softened and the cardinals quieted, and I stood very still in my kitchen, feeling heat pool along my cheekbones the way it used to when a child lied straight to my face about homework I knew they hadn't done. I set the toast back on the plate. I looked at the magnet-cluttered fridge where my grandson's spelling tests used to live. I listened to my own breath. If kindness had been mistaken for idleness, then perhaps I had not been clear. I rinsed the knife, dried it, and opened the drawer where I kept the small recording pen my neighbor had given me after his wife died, saying it helped with lists when grief fogged his brain. I placed it on the counter, not as a threat, but as a reminder to myself that truth prefers company. A car door slammed outside. The blue jay shrieked. Tires crunched my driveway gravel. 13 days from that moment, Sloane would stand in my dining room with her chin lifted like a dare and hear her own words played back to her. But on that morning, while the kettle clicked itself off and steam ghosted my glasses, I decided on something simple. I would feed my grandchildren. I would write down what happened, and I would not be bullied out of my home. Sloane didn't step inside. Her SUV idled at the curb, air conditioner roaring, windows rolled up like she feared contamination. When the back door opened, Evan climbed out first, tall for 12, guarded as if every motion cost him permission. Max tumbled behind him, 9 and restless, earbuds tangled in his shirt. Little Lily clutched a stuffed fox so loved its fur showed seams. "Buckle your seatbelts coming home," Sloane called through the crack of her window, sunglasses hiding the eyes that never sought mine. "Mom's got this, right?" The word mom hung crooked between us. Before I could answer, she pressed the gas and was gone. I bent to Lily's level. "We're okay, sweetheart. Let's get inside before the soup forgets it's hot." The kitchen smelled of thyme and old wood polish. I lined 3 bowls in a row, steam rising like prayer. Lily climbed into a chair, heels swinging. Max flopped into his as if gravity were optional. Evan stood, scanning the room, maybe searching for proof that this was temporary. "Shoes off, please," I said. "We keep the floor clean enough to eat off, though we won't test that theory." Max muttered something about germs. Evan sighed and unlaced. Small victories still count. I ladled soup. Lily first, because being youngest already teaches waiting. Max second, because middle children deserve proof they're seen. Evan last, because oldest sons pretend not to need looking after. Spoons clinked. None of them spoke. The quiet stretched until even the refrigerator hesitated. Between bites, I studied them. How Lily's hair tangled from sleep, how Max's fingernails carried gray crescents of dirt, how Evan's shoulders folded inward like origami around worry. When I asked about school, Evan said, "Fine." Max shrugged. Lily whispered, "We don't talk at dinner." "Then maybe that's what changes here," I said. After dishes, I showed them the hand-drawn chart on the fridge. Chores, bedtime, quiet hour, screen time, not commandments, just rhythm. Evan rolled his eyes. Max announced that at home they didn't have rules. "I'm not home," I said gently, "and neither are you." That night, thunder pressed against the windows. Lily woke crying, the fox clamped between her teeth. I carried her to the sink, ran cool water over her wrists, and whispered the story of a cloud that lost its way. She fell asleep on my shoulder, smelling of soap and rain. In the morning, day 2, sunlight poured through blinds striped like tiger skin. Max clattered down the stairs asking for Wi-Fi. I handed him a broom instead. "Trade you. Sweep first. Signal later." He huffed, but swept. Lily helped feed the neighbor's cat through the fence, solemn as a priest. Evan lingered by the door pretending to text, but there was no message coming. At noon, I made grilled cheese, crisp as it should be. They ate faster than they had soup. Progress is measured in crumbs. After lunch, we walked to Mr. N. Carter's yard, where roses climbed their trellis like overachievers. He tipped his cap. "These yours? Ruth? Mine for now." He told them about pruning, about how plants behave better when they're cut back before they get ideas. Lily touched a petal. Max found a beetle and declared it mayor. Evan stared at the street, counting cars. On the walk home, he asked when his mother would return. "Soon," I said, because never soon enough wasn't comfort. That evening, Daniel called from work, voice muffled by machines. He asked how things were going. I told him the truth he could manage. They were fed, safe, almost smiling. I didn't mention the hollowness in Evan's eyes or the tremor in my own hands when I washed their cereal bowls. After they slept, I sat at the kitchen table under the yellow light that made every surface honest. I looked at the 3 backpacks dumped by the stairs, sticky zippers, candy wrappers, a forgotten permission slip. When I opened Max's, a faint sour smell rose, part sweat, part neglect. I found a homework sheet balled like a secret, the answers half right. I smoothed it with my palm and thought of the hundreds of papers I'd graded that told me more about homes than classrooms ever could. I poured tea. The clock clicked past 10. Outside, cicadas practiced persistence. Inside, I wrote the date on a scrap of paper and tucked it under the sugar bowl. Day 2, no clothing change, no note. Children quiet at meals. The act steadied me, the way writing always had. Day 3 began with rain again, soft this time, the kind that smells like renewal but floods the mailbox. I baked bread to warm the air. The children drifted through the house, restless but less wary. Max asked if we could watch a movie. "After we earn it," I said, handing him a dish towel. He groaned, wiped the counter with exaggerated martyrdom, and then, miracle, smiled. Evan helped me patch the loose hinge on the gate. His hands were sure, his silences less sharp. When I thanked him, he shrugged, but didn't hide the satisfaction. Lily colored on the porch, drawing a red house with a crooked roof and 4 stick figures. "That's you," she said, pointing to the tallest one. "You're holding the fox." In the afternoon, an email arrived from Max's teacher, polite but heavy, concern about missing assignments, lack of focus, bruised knuckles from an incident at lunch. I read it twice, my jaw tightening at the word incident. The woman meant well. Her tone held no judgment, only the fatigue of someone who sees more than she's allowed to say. I forwarded the message to Daniel. He replied a single word, "Thanks," which told me he was still learning how to breathe through guilt. At dinner, we ate the bread warm with butter. Max asked for seconds. Evan told Lily she had crumbs on her cheek, a brother's tenderness returning after hibernation. I said nothing, afraid to scare it away. When the house settled into its nighttime hush, I stood in the doorway of the living room watching the 3 of them sleep. Max sprawled sideways, Evan curled like a question mark, Lily hugging her fox. The lamp on the side table painted everything gold and forgiving. I realized then that memory alone wouldn't protect them. Proof would. I walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer beside the stove, and took out the small recording pen my neighbor had once given me for grocery lists. I held it a moment, feeling its cool weight, not as a spy, but as a witness waiting to be sworn in. I set it in the blue bowl that held the spare keys and whispered, "Just in case the truth needs help remembering." The kettle hissed softly behind me, and the night exhaled through the screen door. Tomorrow would bring its own weather. Tonight, at least, we had warmth, a plan, and the sound of honest sleep. By the fourth morning, the air had turned bright and sharp, the kind that smells like clean laundry left on the line. I gathered the children's clothes for washing and found more absence than fabric. In the pocket of Max's shorts lay a folded receipt with Daniel's name embossed at the top, a resort deposit large enough to pay my mortgage twice, another line for designer shoes, and one more for something only labeled Palm Crest Lounge. I stared at it until the numbers lost meaning. When Daniel arrived that evening, he looked hollowed out, his tie loosened like surrender. I slid the receipt across the table without ceremony. He read, blinked, read again. His voice broke in the middle of a sigh. I thought she just needed space. Space costs less, I said. He rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't want to fight. The kids need you awake, not absent. I kept my tone even. Old teachers know that shouting only scatters meaning. We talked quietly while the children built Lego towers in the living room. Daniel confessed he'd been sleeping on the couch for months, paying bills he never saw. When he left, he promised to come back the next day, to bring clothes and a toothbrush, to be present for longer than one dinner. I waited until his car lights disappeared before allowing myself the small, exhausted luxury of anger. That night, after the children had gone to bed, I brewed tea and called the community legal clinic a neighbor had once mentioned, St. Bridget Legal Aid. The woman who answered spoke with calm authority, the kind that comes from listening to too many families fall apart on speakerphone. I told her I wasn't trying to ruin anyone, only to keep 3 small people steady while the adults learned gravity. She told me to save everything, receipts, messages, dates, even the way silence felt. Paper doesn't forget, she said. The next morning, day 5, an email from Max's teacher arrived. She asked if I could attend a short meeting with the school counselor. The word incident appeared twice, polite but heavy. I wrote back, yes. We met in a small office that smelled of disinfectant and crayons. The counselor knelt to Max's height, asked him how he felt when someone called him dirty. He said, like, maybe they're right. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. The counselor told him everyone gets to feel clean, and I realized she wasn't just talking to him. When we came home, Lily waited on the porch with her drawing pad. She showed me a new picture, a red house, a green yard, and 4 stick figures holding hands. I made you taller this time, she said. I taped it to the fridge beside the chart of chores. Day 6, 2 social workers from DCFS knocked just before lunch. They were young, kind, and professional in the practiced way people are when their jobs require equal parts empathy and evidence. They asked for a welfare check. I nodded, offered tea. They spoke to the children separately in the den. I heard Max telling one of them that Grandma's soup tastes like a hug. Evan, quieter, admitted that he didn't sleep much at his mother's house because she stayed up late talking to a man who isn't Dad. Lily told them I let her feed the cat next door. None of it dramatic, all of it true. When the workers left, they thanked me for cooperating and said they might follow up. Their shoes left no marks on the floor, but the air felt rearranged, lighter in some places, heavier in others. That evening, Daniel showed up again, carrying a duffel bag and a new toothbrush for each child. He helped Max build a paper airplane and let it crash into the couch. Evan watched, unsure whether to join. Lily climbed into his lap as if he'd never left. I set an extra plate at the table without comment. After dinner, Daniel stood in the doorway, surveying the quiet. "I'm moving back in for now," he said. "If that's okay." "It's your family," I replied. "I'm just keeping the lights on." He nodded, eyes shining with something close to relief. Day 7 felt different. We repaired the loose gate together. Evan handed me nails, steady and sure. Max swept the porch with exaggerated flair, trying to impress his father. Lily sang nonsense songs to the fox she carried everywhere. The world, briefly, felt ordinary again. That night, as the kids slept, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug. "She's planning to move to Florida," he said quietly. "She mentioned it before, like a threat. I think she means it now. Then she'll have to do it without taking the children." He nodded, and for the first time since this started, looked like the man I'd raised, exhausted, but standing. Day 8. I got another call from the school. Max had snapped at a classmate, pushed him during recess. I expected shame or anger, but instead he said, "I didn't hit hard." I told him that wasn't the point. We talked about what anger feels like before it becomes fists. He listened, then hugged me tight enough to bruise. That evening, the house smelled of baked apples. Daniel helped Evan with math homework while Lily brushed her fox's tail with a toothbrush. I caught myself humming. When you've lived through chaos, silence becomes its own form of worship. Day 9 arrived with a phone call from Sloan. Her voice came through the speaker, bright as sun glare. "Just checking in. The kids alive?" "They're fine," I said. "Doing their homework." "Good. I'll be back day 13. Laughter echoed behind her. Male, distant. She didn't ask to speak with them. After the call ended, I stood with the phone still in my hand, listening to the refrigerator hum. There are moments when fury and pity meet in the same breath. I felt both and chose neither. I set the phone down, opened the blue bowl on the counter, and looked at the small recording pen resting among the spare keys. My hand hovered but didn't touch. The truth doesn't always need to be invited. Sometimes it just waits. That night, I wrote another note and slipped it into the folder. Day 9. Sloan called. No interest in children. Daniel stable. Kids improving. Then I turned off the light, knowing the story was moving towards something inevitable. We were ready for her return. Day 10 began quietly, as if the world were holding its breath. Daniel left early for a quick meeting, promising to return before noon. I washed the breakfast plates, humming an old hymn, the kind that fills space when words don't help. The kids were outside chalking the driveway. Lily's fox balanced on a fence post like a sentry. For the first time since they'd arrived, laughter sounded unguarded, like glass that had stopped remembering how to shatter. On day 11, Daniel brought home folders from work and a small printer for the dining table. Evidence station, he called it. Together we printed receipts, bank statements, and the teacher's emails. I added my handwritten notes, dates, meals, moods, every tremor I had seen in their small hands. We didn't call it a case, but that's what it was, a slow building of proof for people who hadn't been believed before. That evening, the kids helped bake cookies. Max declared himself the quality inspector, sneaking bites until flour dusted his nose white. Evan mixed quietly, eyes intent, the way Daniel once built model airplanes. Lily pressed each dough ball with her thumb, making perfect little dents for chocolate chips. When we sat down to eat, Daniel said grace, the first time in years. It wasn't about religion. It was about gratitude for air that didn't taste like panic. Day 12 rolled in, humid and expectant. Sloan texted mid-morning, "Landing tomorrow at 10. We'll talk." No apology, no question mark. I showed Daniel the message. He read it, exhaled, and said, "Then tomorrow, we stop pretending." We spent the afternoon cleaning, not for her, but for ourselves. Beds made, dishes washed, papers stacked. At dusk, Daniel sat beside me on the porch. The sun bled orange through the maple leaves. "I thought love meant endurance," he said. "Turns out it just means showing up." "Both are hard," I replied. When morning came, day 13, the air felt heavy, like a stage before the curtain lifts. Sloane's car pulled up at 11:10, 2 hours late. The passenger seat held a shadow of movement, maybe a man's silhouette, maybe memory playing tricks. She stepped out in designer sunglasses, smile rehearsed. She didn't knock. She opened the door and froze when she saw us seated at the dining table. Daniel, the kids, and me. On the table lay our stacks of paper, a calendar, and the small blue bowl with the recording pen resting inside. "Keys," she said sharply to Evan. "Let's go. I don't have all day." "No one's going anywhere yet," Daniel said. His tone was calm, the kind that stops storms. "We need to talk." "I don't think so," she answered, dropping her purse on a chair. "You don't get to ambush me in front of the kids." I pressed the pen's button. A soft click filled the air. "This is just to keep the truth straight," I said. Sloane laughed, brittle and bright. "You've lost your mind." Daniel slid a folder toward her. "Bank records. Charges you made while I was covering the mortgage. There's a copy for your lawyer." Her eyes flickered, the smallest tremor. "You went through my things?" "You went through our savings." Before she could answer, Evan's voice cut through. "Mom, we're not luggage." His words came out thin but steady. Max added, "I don't want to move. I like it here." Lily clutched her fox, whispering, "Grandma makes soup that doesn't yell." Sloane turned red. "You brainwashed them," she snapped. "No," I said. "They just stopped being afraid of the echo." For a long second, nobody moved. Then Daniel said quietly, "I filed for temporary separation. You'll have supervised visits at the family center until the custody hearing in 90 days. Sloane's jaw worked like she was chewing broken glass. "You can't." "I already did," he said. Outside. A car horn sounded, the man in her passenger seat, impatient. She looked toward the door, then back at the children. For the first time, she seemed smaller than her anger. She snatched her purse, muttered something about lawyers, and stormed out. The slam of the door was final, a punctuation mark that ended a long, unedited paragraph of our lives. I exhaled without realizing I'd been holding breath for months. Daniel reached across the table and covered my hand with his. "Thank you, Mom," he said, "for doing something." I looked at the children, 3 pairs of eyes wide with the unfamiliar quiet of safety, and felt both relief and grief. The war was over, but the cleanup would take time. That night, while the house slept. I picked up the recording pen, pressed stop, and whispered to the empty room. We told the truth, and it stayed. 90 days passed like a slow tide smoothing sharp rocks. The hearings came and went. Paperwork, signatures, measured voices inside rooms that smelled of dust and coffee. The court granted Daniel full custody. Sloane, now living in Florida, received supervised visits once a month. She sent gifts occasionally, always too shiny, too loud, as if wrapping paper could replace time. The children opened them politely and went back to their drawings. Life in Cedar Ridge found a rhythm that didn't need constant explaining. Daniel worked from home more, fixing servers and making pancakes on the same schedule. Evan joined a robotics club. Max started therapy with Dr. Feld, who taught him that anger is just sadness wearing armor. Lily learned to tie her own shoes and fed the neighbor's cat every morning without being asked. I turned the guest room into the art corner, stocked with brushes, colored paper, and a sign Evan painted. Truth lives here. On Saturdays, the house smelled of crayons and cinnamon. Sometimes I caught myself watching them and wondering how something so broken could still sing. Mother's Day arrived warm and bright. The kids gave me a handmade photo album, our first 3 months together. On the cover, in crooked letters, they'd written, "Grandma Ruth, our safe place." I closed the book, eyes stinging, and whispered to no one in particular. The best revenge is healing, and the truth that never leaves.